Hi, my name's Mark Harrison. When we last met, I was teaching Algebra 2 and Trigonometry with Precalculus. I'm still teaching those classes to the same students. The Algebra 2 students are wearing me down a little bit, but our semester changes on January 26th, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. At that point, I'll be teaching Algebra 2 and Calculus. Most of my teaching is face-to-face in a brick-and-mortar school, although I have supplemented with some online activities and specifically with some video recordings that the students really seem to like. Nothing has shaken me to the core, but I have observed that planning an online activity, planning an online lesson, takes a lot of time. Implementing the lesson, not quite as much time, but I suspect that if I were doing an entire program or an entire course, that the bookkeeping could take up a lot of time. The answering emails and monitoring discussion posts and monitoring student progress, making parent contacts, those sorts of things. I could imagine that that would take up a great deal of time. So, but the front end, the preparing the lessons online takes a lot of time. I've also noticed from the student perspective, from the courses I've taken, that I am much more deeply engaged in online classes than I am in a face-to-face class. Much more introspective about the comments that I make, because I realize when you make a comment, it's kind of permanent. So you want to be very careful to say exactly what you mean. You don't want to hurt feelings. On the other hand, you do need to convey sometimes professional disagreements, but you need to be really, really careful about the way you word things, because there's no inflection, and so word choice is very important. I'm really hoping to learn ways to make online teaching engaging and student-centered. One of the big problems I have face-to-face with that Algebra 2 class that's wearing me down is they're very distracted by various things, mostly by their phones, but also by each other. Face-to-face, it's hard to maintain their attention. I can only imagine what it would be like if they had the absolute opportunity to completely tune me out. So I think it's going to be something that I would really like to know, is how to make engaging student-centered lessons. That brings me to the Thorman and Zimmerman discussion about the importance of developing a philosophy of education online. I think there are a number of objectives that I would address in my philosophy of online instruction, and that would be online instruction must engage students. So it must be student-centered. I'm a constructivist. I just think about the way that I've learned and the way that everyone I know has learned, and that is, you take your personal experience to something new that you're learning, and you apply that experience to the new thing you're learning. And then through a process of interacting with the new material and bringing that in contact with the things that you already know, you construct a meaning. And sometimes new material changes the way you think about old things. A lot of times, though, the perspective you bring to a subject really does, it makes a difference as far as how, not only how you learn something, but the sorts of things that resonate with you, and how you're going to use the things that you learn. So it must engage students, must be student-centered. Again, the distraction problem is difficult face-to-face. Online, if a student can just tune you out, I can just see them, switching on YouTube or Candy Crush or something, and suddenly it makes no difference what your online instruction is if they're not watching it. So making content meaningful is important for my philosophy of education. It's got to be student-centered, and it's got to be engaging. Point number 2 for my philosophy: online education has to meet students at a point where their background knowledge is sufficient to allow them to progress to new material. I think one of the shortcomings of face-to-face instruction is we put 30 students in a classroom, and we give them a set of objectives. I'm a math teacher, and so the things that they are going to try to learn that are new depend on their already knowing some things. A lot of times, all of the students know most of the things. Some of the students don't know all of the things. And so it's very difficult for a student to learn new material if they have gaps in their previous education. So online education presents a wonderful opportunity for students to remediate gaps. And I really think that unless online education does that, then well, my philosophy is that online education has to address that issue. And I think online education is probably in a unique position to do that because of the materials that are available and the way you can structure instruction. And then my third point for my philosophy is online education must give students at a minimum the skills that they would get if they were taking a class with the same name face-to-face. Okay, so if a student's taking a class online called Algebra 2, if they get credit for that Algebra 2 class online, then they need to have the same skills that they would have if they took a face-to-face Algebra 2 class. I know that there are students at my school who take credit recovery classes. It seems they watch a video or two online and they complete some selected response tests, and magically they've somehow mastered the content of Algebra 2 when they couldn't learn it face-to-face. And they've done this through some kind of online credit recovery course. I don't think that that fits in my philosophy of online education. There's a set of standards that all math teachers know. The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics have a set of standards. There's the Common Core state standards, and they're very much aligned with each other for what each course content should be. And if a student's going to receive credit for Algebra 2, they need to know Algebra 2. It can't just be that someone waved a magic wand because they sat in a room for a number of hours and completed some check-off activities. So, and that benefits the student as well. We don't want a student leaving a class called Algebra 2 thinking they know Algebra 2 and then they get to college and they have to take remedial math courses or something like that because in fact they didn't learn any Algebra 2. So we have to hold ourselves accountable and we have to hold students accountable that if we're going to call a course something, that it teaches the content of that course. Okay, off my soapbox. Yes, online teaching can and should inform our face-to-face instruction. In making the move to K-12 online teaching, Carrie Rice repeatedly points out that good teaching is good teaching. And that's absolutely true. Whether it's online or face-to-face, you know it when you see it, you know it when you're doing it, your students know it when you're doing it, and I think your students also know when you're not doing it. And so things that you learn in online teaching certainly should apply to your face-to-face instruction. Some of my online activities, trying to engage students online, have really led me to believe that some of the activities that I use regularly with my face-to-face classes are deadly dull. And so I've tweaked some of them, I've abandoned others, and I've retooled others that in a way that I hope the students find more engaging and meet the same objectives that we met before. The presenter at your conference also made me think of another topic that we frequently encounter. You know, since everyone went to school, everyone has strong opinions about how education should be run. And so if you think back on your own prior experiences and you see someone else going through something similar, you think, well, you know, when I was in school, we had to do our times tables across the top of a sheet of paper 5 times in 10 minutes, and that's the way it should be done. Everyone needs to continue to do the things they've always done that way. And I think there's going to be some pushback as we move to online education. But once we make the move, it'll be a long time before you get a conversation like, well, when I went to online school. So that's a couple years in the distance. But we have the opportunity even now to get it right from the start. And so I'm really hoping to be part of that. Of course, I'm reaching the tail end of my career, but I really hope as we move forward, here we are on the ground level of something. I really hope that that we can get this online education thing right from the start, because I think our children deserve it, and our future, the future of our country depends on it.